Welcome to this episode of Enterprise Matters. I'm Vinod Kumar, your host for the day, and we will be talking about the possibilities of looking at plugging micro and small entrepreneurs from India in global markets and helping them harness the potential for B2C exports. We have some very eminent people today that are going to join us, and I am going to introduce them one by one. I have here Mr. Welcome, Bipinji. And we
Namaskar,
are
Vinodji.
joined by Namaskar, Namaskar, sir. And we are also joined by Bhupen Bakankar. Welcome, Bhupen.
Vinodji, Vipinji, good to see you again, and thank you for having us.
Pleasure is all ours. It is a pleasure to have all of you here on the chat today, especially after the I'd say MSME focused budget in the third term of the Narendra Modi government. I think that has been a really exciting couple of days that we've had in trying to look at what is it that the government has in store for us. And there were quite a few surprises, frankly, even though we keep on talking to the government on various levels, but finally, what makes the budget is no man's guess. So, quite a few surprises right there, even for e-commerce. The fact that the government is looking at exports in a big way, especially connecting small medium enterprises to supply chains around the world. So, very warm welcome today, and thank you for joining this discussion that we have. And I'm going to first start with Bipinji. Bipinji, we just talked about this report that ENY came out that you launched at a few weeks back on e-commerce exports and how to harness the potential and all that. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and then we can have Bhupen and discuss them further. On one hand, we've been talking about the fact that there is a huge amount of possibilities that we are looking at the e-commerce, cross-border e-commerce space in the world. And uh, India is still at the starting points. Not at a point wherein we have achieved a certain good number. And I think there are very few players that are actually pushing for Indian MSMEs to go online, especially for exports and into the B2C space. So, what is your feeling? What is it that we are missing, and what do you think is the potential for India?
I think, first of all, thank you, Vinodji, for having me here. It's always a pleasure to speak on this forum. And just wanted to show my report, which we had published along with SHM. I think I really like it. We try to cover all the issues which the MSMEs are facing in terms of e-commerce exports. And given the number, which is the potential which the government also feels would be around $200 to $300 billion by 2030. This is the report, or it's basically a way of reaching that number as quickly as possible. I won't say we have just started out. I think we have tremendous potential out there, given the strength of MSMEs which we have. And MSMEs I think, is the backbone of the entire industry, and on which India still works. Finding them the right markets, the right access, that's what we are looking for, and that's where players like Amazon and other e-commerce players come in a big way to make that happen. the problems which we have seen these players, the MSMEs, encounter, or where we feel that e-commerce players are in a better position to really harness the strength of this area, we have tried to bring that out. And I think the government is quite focused on all of these points. There is a huge debate which is going on. We just try to collate all those points and give the government the suggestions as to what can be the potential solutions to all of these. And I feel in the coming few days, we need to see a lot of action. This budget was a precursor as to where some of these points, which we had already pointed out, were picked up, like export hubs and other things. We look forward to more such points being taken up. So that's the basic introduction I think we should set with. Look forward to talking more about more details on this.
In fact, where I was coming from, Vipinji, was the fact that we are already looking at a cross-border e-commerce tally of around $800 billion around the world, and India, when we are just riding on the back of Amazon Global Selling or whatever it is that they are doing, which is actually maybe somewhere around $4.5 to $5 billion is what we have reached so far. But it's a long way to go. I get in Bhupen here. He might be able to put in a little more light on the fact that when we are talking about global e-commerce, especially cross-border, and then we are talking about where India is, and I think Bhupen, you've seen the entire ecosystem being built as we move forward. Getting e-commerce into the limelight, pushing for things to happen at the ground level, and also I'd say capacity building of MSMEs for them to go online and all. So what is your take on this?
Yeah, Vinodji, thank you for having us. And I think we've spoken in other events that India SME Forum has also organized, right? What we are seeing over the last 18 to 24 months is nothing short of sort of a magic in terms of the energy that the ecosystem has gotten behind from an e-commerce exports perspective. If you think about just the terms e-commerce exports, right? I've talked about it earlier. People understand e-commerce, merchants and traders and brands understand e-commerce, which is domestic e-commerce, and people understand exports. And then when you put those two words together, often people get very confused as to, oh, is that even possible? I had no idea that that was possible. And not only is it possible, it is a large and vibrant sector that all the global economies are sort of participating in. And our merchants and brands have started over the last 2-3 years realizing that the size of the price in the market is really tremendously large, right? And in Amazon Global Selling, the program is completing about 9 years. In that 9 years, about 125,000, 1.25 lakh MSMEs have been part of the program, right? And we have crossed $8 billion in cumulative exports already. This is $8 billion going straight to the MSME, not somebody taking just giving you just a manufacturing margin for it and so on and so forth, right? And then we are on track to deliver $20 billion. So just imagine the first 8 years took us 8 billion, and then the next 12 billion are going to happen in a little over 2.5 years that we are thinking about. That's the kind of acceleration we are seeing. So I'm quite excited by what I see, Bipinji, in your report. It captures the size of the prize and sort of the key needle movers really, really well. And I think it'll be a good discussion for us to sort of highlight some of those things that will create the next level of hockey stick.
In fact, that brings me to ask Bipinji that, we're now talking about the role of online marketplaces and e-commerce platforms, which has now become extremely important. The budget also highlights the fact that, there are now going to be e-commerce exports hubs that are going to be set up across the country. What, in your mind, Bipinji, when you made that suggestion to the government, what do you think the government needs to do? If we have to have a sizable number, put up there or compete with the other economies that are actually hogging the limelight as far as the B2C exports are concerned.
So in our report, we have compared our systems with China, which is where we have tried to show as to how China has tackled this issue and brought about changes or brought about trade facilitation, uh, easy export clearance, which have resulted in e-commerce exports growing substantially. So China would be one of the biggest markets, biggest exporters when it comes to e-commerce export, where this would be in the range of almost 11% of their total exports. So, which is huge. It would be highest as per my understanding. While we would be in the range of 1 to 1.5% of the total exports. So when we talk about export hubs or uh, the areas of facilitation, what we are really looking at is that a lot of time is spent in getting goods exported out of the country. And if we can have dedicated hubs, so today the exports take place through various mechanisms. It could be through the courier exports, which have a particular ecosystem around which they work with. And there could be other mechanisms also for e-commerce experts, depending upon the business model which that particular e-commerce operator or the MSME is following. Uh, but ultimately, the focus which is there that these e-commerce exports have to be treated separately. They have to be given preference. They have to be given facilitation, and that is what we are picking up in other countries like China, where there are separate custom codes which are being given, and these export hubs which are there in China. Trade facilitation happens at a much faster rate as compared to what we are able to do here in custom courier exports or other similar methods of exporting by MSMEs. So we have tried to bring in that all of those issues, and there are various issues when it comes to what all changes we would want. But on the trade facilitation, easier logistics, easier customs clearance, export hubs is one solution which we feel will go a long way. One, in facilitating the trade, and second, bringing the focus on the e-commerce exports. Today, exports have been a focus for us for the times immemorial. For the last 30, 40 years since I have been in this practice, I've seen that there is a lot of focus on export promotions. There is focus on getting export incentives. But when it comes to e-commerce exports, there has been no such focus.
No, no.
With the coming of Amazon and other players, and we would want more such Amazons to be out there, so that if the entire ecosystem grows, then only India can reach the potential which is there of 200 to 300 billion dollars. And I think this effort which we have done is to bring to make that happen out there. Uh, so yeah, that's basically I would want to answer on that point.
In fact, that takes me to another part of the same thing. We're talking about quite a few categories like handicrafts, textiles, organic foods. They are all, Bhupanji, we've discussed this earlier, that they're all high export potential products or categories, I'd say.
Yeah.
How is it that we can get MSMEs in India to select the right products that can resonate with the global consumer?
Yeah, great question. And I think it fundamentally goes back to what constitutes e-commerce purchases for customers outside of India. And if you start looking at large marketplaces that Amazon plays in, right? Our largest marketplace, which is United States, and then all the other large G20 countries, UK, Japan, Germany, and so on. Amazon has 18 marketplaces all over the world. And if you look at it traditionally, the bias might be that in domestic India e-commerce, mostly it is digital goods, cell phones and large appliances and so on. But that's not the case globally. Globally, e-commerce has been a very mature industry compared to what it is in India. And consumers buy all kinds of things that they use on an everyday basis, right? So the largest categories often tend to be home and kitchen, right? Then there's a whole bunch of stuff on apparel and fashion, and kids wear, pets wear. Then it goes down to toys, which includes STEM toys, pet foods, consumable products for all forms of human consumption, whether it is energy drinks, whether it is preventative medication, herbal supplements, stuff that we put on your hair to help drive health of the hair, or whatever you take to consume your blood, sort of keep your bloodstream clean through use of turmeric or ashwagandha or things like that. So literally think of everything that a human being can consume in their daily lives, whether at home or at office or at the gym that they go to or the sports facility that they play at. All of that is available on e-commerce exports, and those are the largest categories. Our players are starting to play in that category by looking at some of the insights that providers such as Amazon provide. So, for example, in Amazon, when you create an account for us on Seller Central, we have a whole bunch of insights on a program called Opportunity Explorer. So it sort of tells you what are the categories that are doing well, which products are doing well. If you want to take a look at the bestsellers, you can actually just go to Amazon.com, look at the bestsellers, and see what did really, really well in the recently concluded Prime Day, for example, right? So all our entrepreneurs that we are seeing over the last 3-4 years, where we're starting to see this acceleration, have really embraced this digital footprint that is available to them to understand what customers in the US, Germany, Japan, UAE, Singapore, Australia, how are they shopping? What are the price points that they are comfortable with? What is the type of nature of packaging, labeling, branding, awareness of the product that they really look for and solve for? And then they're sort of creating their own product offerings to match that customer demand.
Excellent. Another very important point that just came to my mind. We're talking about the fact that you have so many MSMEs in India that want to now look at progressive markets around the world for their products that might actually have great potential. And I completely concur with Bhupen. There are millions and millions of products in India that we have that would be extremely exciting for audiences around the world. But at some point in time, the issues are bigger. We have logistics hurdles, we have shipping costs, we have delivery times, which are hindering the entry of new aspirants, basically because of these. Apart from the fact that there are other issues which are like credit availability and the financial issues that most of us have. What sort of innovation or innovative solutions should MSCs implement to overcome these logistic challenges as far as today? And Bipinji, also, what should the government of India do? They are doing quite a few things, in terms of we've seen where the India Post is coming in and setting up these mechanisms for picking up parcels right at from tier 2, tier 3 cities. Apart from that, what else should the government also do? So we're looking at both sides, the MSCs as well as the government.
So I think, the first thing which the government has to do is to make the whatever the hurdles are that they take around e-commerce exports, we need to remove that. The first thing which we actually, which I personally feel, is that there is a cost attached to exporting through e-commerce, which comes through payment reconciliations and other charges which a payment reconciliation entails. That's the first ask of the MSMEs, that should be reduced. Today we do a fixed amount for the package of 2,000, 3,000, or 4,000 rupees. If 1,500 or 2,000 is being paid for the payment reconciliation, that doesn't really add up. Places like China or any other place have a percentage basis of the export, and that makes sense. And that percentage can be whatever are the best global benchmarks we can pick up. Then there are issues like that the maximum value which can be exported through a courier export, that needs to change. There is a limitation on the value on which the courier export can be done. That has to go away. There's no such limit when it comes to US, to China or other big players. And what does this that does is that ultimately, if you are exporting to Korea, the cost is still on a reasonable basis, and the times are really fast. The turnaround times are really fast. But if you have to really take any other mechanism to export those goods through a normal ICD route or a ship to any other route, then it would take a long time, and the cost would also be higher. So that's one of the biggest asks which there is. There is a host of asks which the government we have given to the government through this report, and we look forward that the government will take care, whether it comes from payment reconciliations, custom clearance, logistics. All of these are areas which there are topics, and we can go into depth of all of these, and maybe we will, depending on what you ask in the coming questions. Uh, but people should have would have access to this report, I hope, and they should read this report, and it will give you an idea as to we have really thought through all the issues which we could think of, which were relevant at this point of time with the MSMEs, and we have put it there. That's on the side of the what the government to do, because that's something which we have really considered. uh, from the side of the MSMEs themselves, I think, and maybe Bhupen would be in much more better position to answer that. But for me, I think technology-driven solutions is very important. One, I think technology is something which everybody should embrace, and if you have technology-driven solutions, I think you can save the cost a lot higher. Then there are facilities which DGFT, and there are solutions like there are trainings like Niryat Bandhu is there, which you can really, where there's a tie-up of DGFT and IIFT. You can understand what are the requirements out there and how can you really do things faster and at a much lesser rate. And we need to really take care of that. Then there can be strategic partnership. I think e-commerce platforms themselves are the biggest help which these MSMEs have, which when they do it alone, that doesn't exist. So I think it will be a smart MSME who will reach out to the e-commerce operator to really provide them the necessary help and support. And I think, and I'll let Bhupen to answer that, they would be in a better position to help those MSMEs also. So yeah, I
In fact,
think
we have a question. We have a question put on. We got that on the screen from Atif. And he's particularly specifically asked that what is it that Amazon has implemented? Knowing the logistic challenges that we have in cross-border trade, particularly in regions with underdeveloped infrastructure. So, Bhupen, it's right up your alley in terms of what you'd
Yeah, I'm
like to
happy
answer.
to. Happy to, and I think I'm glad to see sort of the questions also flowing in. I think, Vinodji, the way you framed the question was very interesting to me. What can the MSME do already, and what is already available, and what they can jump on right away, and then what sort of can make things better through government interventions that Bipin talked about. So let me cover the first part, and then I had a little bit of a addition to what Bipinji was saying on the government related actions. So first thing, I think if you just look at what does it take to get on e-commerce exports, right? I talked about market access and market intelligence. How do I even reach that customer, or how do I even understand what the customer wants, is a completely solved technology problem, right? And I want MSMEs to sort of not have any anxiety about how do I even get to understand what the customer needs are, or how do I even reach the customer, because scalable programs like Amazon Global Selling, I know eBay also has an offering, Etsy also offers a bunch of cross-border stuff. So anything to do with customer access and customer insights, I want all our MSMEs to be very, very clear. Whatever tools and technologies are available to domestic sellers in the US, in UK, in Germany, those same tools and techniques are available to you, right? So that takes care of one part of the equation. Now, of course, you need enabling parts, right? Cross-border logistics, cross-border payments being the largest parts of it. And players such as Amazon, we now have a solution called Amazon Send, which is essentially a logistics service for taking inventory from your warehouses and moving them forward, deploying them in Amazon warehouses all over the world, so that you don't have to, every time you want to send a shipment into an Amazon warehouse, you don't have to negotiate rates every time, you don't have to talk to 5 different carriers. It's a very friction full way to negotiate rates for every inbound shipment that you make, which Amazon Send has just completely eliminated all those friction points for you, right? And we are happy to take more questions related to that service. But in general, cross-border logistics has sort of gone through the first level of technology adoption and first level of access that MSMEs have, in the same spirit that large corporations had access for cross-border logistics. Cross-border payments is another aspect where Amazon itself has a technology called ACCS, where no matter where the sale happens, a German customer can buy in Europe, a Japanese customer can buy in yen, and an American customer can buy in dollars, and you will get money in rupees in your account every 15 days seamlessly. So you don't have to worry about, do I need a foreign bank account? How often can I get money in? How do I manage my cash flows and things of that nature, right? And I think that is a level of sophistication. While the first two are really, really mature, the second one is sort of in the next level of maturity. The third level, when it comes to sort of compliance, how do I declare the value of goods? What happens at the ports? What happens once the cash flow comes in? Those bits are the ones that probably need a lot more attention. MSMEs today are taking use of a lot of service providers that are available in India who are helping them with sort of these compliance related matters. But that's where sort of the anxiety comes into play. And while there are players that are available that will help you through, it's almost like if I had to file my IT tax return domestically, I go to a chartered accountant, right? There are people like that who will help you for all of the cross-border logistics stuff. In Amazon Send, for example, if you are sending a consumable shipment and Germany demands that you have certain certificates to prove that this is an organic product or this is an antimicrobial bedsheet or whatever, all of these documents can now be digitally embedded. You will have service providers who will help you get through the certifications and all of that you're doing, but it is not as friction-free as the first 2 points that I talked about, or nearly not as friction-free as the cross-border logistics. I think that's where it starts to become an area where the government can start making things a lot simpler, right? Bipinji talked about directly merchant fulfilled orders or both forward deployed orders. Both classes need to be understood because merchants are increasingly adopting the forward deploy model. In the business that we see, for example, over 80% of our business merchants are adopting forward deploys because they're closer to the customer. They see a lot more conversion. They see a lot more feedback from the customers on their products and so on. So can the e-commerce export hub, as we've talked about, that other nations have adopted already, understand the bifurcation of the needs and how is this different from traditional B2B, right? B2C e-commerce is many, many small shipments spread over a large period of time versus B2B is one large shipment. So an average B2B shipment might be $100,000, but an average B2C shipment can be anywhere between $500 to $10,000, right? So how do you do so many of these shipments in a day is a challenge. And the thoughts that e-commerce hub, etc., will sort of facilitate that conversation and eliminating the friction points for that. So that would be my sort of thought. The MSMEs need to be very, very clear that there are already some strengths that they can adopt. And there are toolkits available, there are service providers available for where there isn't as much help available directly. But the government is starting to look at that in a big way when it comes to foreign exchange compliance, when it comes to customs compliance at the ports.
In fact, one of the biggest issues that people I think are talking about, I have a couple of people that are basically talking about returns. When it comes to returns, that is a very expensive mechanism. So most people just give up the thing and say, I don't want it back. Just scrap the entire thing. There's also quite a few people that have actually talked about this. So you have Stuti here. There was Manisha there that are talking about because of return costs. So just in case there are returns. There's also somebody talking about third-party warehouses. There's also another person talking about how do you overcome freight rates and all that compared to China's superior connectivity with other costs. Maybe Bipin would like to take that and then followed by Bhupen. There's lots of questions coming in on this specific topic.
So returns is definitely a problem, Vinod, and you're right. That's what my perception is, that most of the people do give up their returns given the cost involved and the effort involved in actually getting them back. And returns do make a substantial part of the goods which are going away. It's the very nature. If you look at the domestic market, returns exist, and returns exist substantially the e-commerce operators really take care of all of that in the local regime. When it comes to the goods coming back, there are certain rules which have been laid down by the customs, which require that the goods which are coming back and the goods which have gone up, there should be a clear reconciliation that both of them are the same, so that the benefit can be given. So while the notification exists, the process itself is so cumbersome that it's very difficult to actually match one to one of these goods. And hence, the B2C returns is always a problem area. Now, most of the countries face this, but they have really done a couple of things which have really helped, and those are the suggestions which we have forwarded to the government. One of them is that whatever comes, like anything which is in the realm of given a certain value, below that, the import should be free. So, like US talks about $800 of value, below which any import which comes in should come in free. The moment it is free, there will be no process involved at all. We have given a suggestion that the baggage rules today give an allowance of 50,000, bringing in 50,000 worth of goods into the country if you are traveling abroad. Uh, just take that value. That's somewhere close to a $600, which works for India, which has worked in the past and continues to work. Why can't we do it for the returns also during imports? It's an ABC analysis that they really do not bring in any such substantial revenue, and hence those should be really avoided. So that's the first solution. The second is that we need to work out a mechanism in partnership with the e-commerce operators, where whatever is going out and whatever is coming back, if the e-commerce operators can help in certifying or bringing in uh, some sort of a mechanism by which they can match that whatever is going out was indeed whatever is coming in is whatever went out. I think that'll help. That's what other countries have used, and that's what India can do. And given most of the big e-commerce operators in the country have a global presence, it would really help in we can use their expertise in making this happen. And then there are certain rules which India has also implemented in case of gems and jewelry. It's still I would still be more want to be more liberal as compared to gems and jewelry, which are commodities which where there might be issues involved. But uh, I think it's a the process has to be simple. The bottom line is that you need to create a mechanism. Uh, there could be a simple mechanism like a photograph which can be used instead of there. Everything will not have a number. So we have given a lot of suggestions out there that returns need to be simplified. You can reach a point where to say that this percentage of return annually is acceptable absolutely, and anything beyond may need to be looked at more closely, and that would help for the particular MSME that for the particular set of returns, they won't be looked at the port. So I think we need to pick up global best practices and implement them and use the e-commerce operators to the best of our advantage. Over to you, Bhupen, maybe, or the
Yeah, good question. I think at least the trends that we are seeing on how brands and entrepreneurs are dealing with the situation is twofold. One is, of course, yes, returns is a situation, but their entrepreneurs have taken some smart approaches to minimize that impact and leverage technology to minimize that impact. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'll talk a little bit about just what would it take to get the returns back and so on. So first thing is, when you go into the forward deployed mode, Amazon's domestic warehouses take care of returns and sort of restocking the parts and making them available for sale once again if needed. So the forward deployed model sort of solves a large portion of your problem on the returns. Whereas if you directly ship from India and the customer says, hey, I don't like this product, or this size is not correct, or the color is not correct, then it has to go back to you physically. And so it has to go cross-border on the return leg, versus when you forward deploy, it stays within the country and available for resale for another customer. So that's one solve that our entrepreneurs have started to adopt. The second reason for returns often is a demand supply mismatch. That I thought I will sell 500 units or 1,000 units of these, but only half of those got sold. So what do I do with the rest, right? And through use of market insights and customer insights, as well as through use of tools such as Amazon Send, where you don't have to send large number of shipments to get a favorable shipping rate. People have figured out that you can actually send small quantities of a few items a lot more often. We have Vinodji on our platform, sellers who send shipments to Amazon warehouses every week, and they like the predictability of sending shipments every week versus one big bag shipment where the supply demand mismatch can happen in a big way, right? So two parts of the answer. First is there are intelligent ways of managing your returns substantially. Lots of your peer groups are adopting those techniques. Some of these are very well established. A lot of Amazon tools give you suggestions on how to manage that. That said, yes, returns, some portion of your business will see returns. Either you can adopt a liquidation policy. Amazon works with lots of liquidators, and you can get domestic, take care of that inventory domestically, or you bring it back because you want to use the raw material for reshaping the product wherever it is feasible, and so on and so forth, right? On the return, like definitely all the questions that Bipinji talks about exist in a big way. Now, if an e-commerce hub is saying, hey, this inventory through this package went through this e-commerce tag, then can we use a similar tag because the seller has a digital footprint? All of Amazon inbound data is available to her. So she can report to the government that this shipment went back in May and now it is coming back. Or I sent this shipment directly to the customer 3 weeks ago and now it is coming back. All of these options become available once a shipment is digitally tagged as e-commerce. And those are some of the capabilities that e-commerce hubs could enable that facilitates returns in a big way. I think the gems and jewelry industry has been a pioneer. They were able to influence and create a mechanism for returns because these are extremely high value items. But there's no reason why this can't happen even for smaller value items like Bipinji talked about.
No, I completely agree there, Bhupen. In fact, I've been talking to the government from quite a bit of personal experiences where I've been telling them that, it's the same case when you talk about a tourist coming to India and actually paying for a product, a GST included price. Why should the tourist have to pay that? Because he's going to carry that product back. So, a similar mechanism, which could actually overlap between both an e-commerce operator or a cross-border operator and a duty payback or a duty refund sort of a mechanism. If the product goes out of India, we refund the money. If it comes back, you got to hold on to the GST. Now, something like that actually can be easily put in because we're talking about this entire thing of digital, an exercise which is digital in nature. So it's very easy to track and figure out. Also, we had a long discussion with the Honorable Revenue Secretary, and about the digital public infrastructure, and this is exactly where what we are talking about. Where a lot of when you talk about B2C e-commerce, cross-border e-commerce, where DPI can actually come in and help me, raise these bills, help me, get the customs clearance on fingertips, and if in case a return comes, I can just accept it back, and that's it. There's no more time one has to waste on this. And these are tools that can very easily be done. Smaller countries like Georgia. Bipinji was talking about China, but I can tell you, you have very small country called Georgia in the middle of Europe, and they have a fascinating system. Very, 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 very simple, exactly like this. And moving forward, what I'd like to also talk about is there's so many people that are asking, from the experiences of MSMEs that have already gone online, what are the best practices that an MSME needs to put in place? What do you think, Bhupen? Which are the things? You talked about a lot of stuff that an MSME can do, and a lot of experiences of people that have actually been very successful. I know quite a few, but I've not actually tracked their best practices and everything. But I'm sure you must be tracking their best practices as to what exactly are they doing in order to be successful? So can you share a couple of things with us?
Yeah, happy to. And I'll probably just take the opportunity. There was a question on third-party warehouses or external warehouses that
Yes.
probably I'll just take last time. I forgot to answer that. So if you have third-party warehouses that you already work with in the US or Europe or wherever, you can actually inbound directly from those warehouses to our warehouses on an as-needed basis, where the transit time will be a lot smaller, and therefore you can manage your inventory costs in a big way. You don't necessarily have to have take stuff directly to Amazon warehouses, although we recommend that because that is a best practice, and I'll talk a little bit about inventory management specifically. But the tool infrastructure is flexible, that you can choose whatever logistics infra that you want. Now let's go at the best practices, and let's break the problem statement down, right? So I talked about what to list. How do I even know what customers really want? And there are best practices around what to list. Then there are best practices around how to list. What is a good listing? How should the picture look like? What is the size of the image should be? What should be the backdrop be? What should the keywords be? What should be in the description? What should be in the details that you provide? What is A plus content? There are best practices around how to list. Now, once you've created the listing, how do I optimize the visibility of that listing, right? So how do I use tools such as keywords that sellers are using, keywords that customers are using to search for products, and plug them into your listing itself? Or how do I use tools such as sponsored ads to drive initial set of traffic, what we call as paid traffic, to eventually drive organic traffic into your product page? How do you figure out use of programs such as wine reviews to start the cold start problem of reviews with it? So there are best practices on what to list, how to drive visibility for it, and then finally how to inbound and fulfill. A whole bunch of training content is already available to you on Seller University at Amazon, and our team, Amazon Global Selling Team, continues to do a bunch of webinars and even export connects at district and city levels. So please look out for our LinkedIn page for the set of schedules that we are publishing, and you will have your peer sellers talk a little bit about the best practices in each of these areas. They tend to get very, very specific depending on the category that you are in. So if you're selling a consumable product, a best practice for listing might be very different. If you're selling a small appliance, it might be very different. So I can't cover generically stuff here, but those are the 4 blocks that we break them down into, and then there are specific techniques available for your benefit.
Okay, so we have another question which is very specific on the report. It talks about the report discusses the need for MSEs to track performance metrics. Now, what sort of specific metrics should MSEs focus on to evaluate their success in global e-commerce? I think maybe Bipin can take this.
So I was just looking to, there are a large number of metrics we have really talked about, and one is the conversion rate, where the measure of percentage of website visitors who complete a purchase, average order value, customer acquisition cost, customer lifetime value, cart abandonment rate. It shows the percentage of customers who start a purchase but don't complete it. So these are the core metrics. Then there are additional metrics like customer retention rate, repeat purchase rate, and then there are global specific metrics like cross-border returns, currency fluctuations, customer acquisition cost by country. So all of these are some metrics, I think, which are very useful, which need to be really looked at.
So maybe Zeba, we will, go through the report and maybe create a set of metrics for all of you and maybe post it on our WhatsApp groups so that you will have specific answers. Nina, we are going to share the Amazon Global page. It's a LinkedIn page that is there, so you can get it. I have too many questions. I don't think I'll be able to answer all of them. There are more than 400 people of our guests here today. So, guys, I will not be able to answer all the questions. Please be very, very specific when you are talking to wishing Bhupen or Vipinji, either of them, to answer. So, only those questions we can, take. Now, one of the things that I also wanted to ask Bhupen is, today we are talking about every large enterprise, every corporate leveraging AI and data intelligence and all that. How is that today useful for you to actually run e-commerce export operations from India internationally, Bhupen?
Yeah, good question. And I think some of these tools become automatically available to you because Amazon has sort of created a platform for it, right? So, for example, we have a tool called List Once and Sell Globally, which takes care of at least certain portion of machine-driven translation. So, suppose you're selling a skincare product in America, and you create a listing in English. Now, if you want to list it in German and Japanese and all of that, there are a bunch of machine algorithms that can do the first level of transition. Of course, each country and each region, you might have to market things slightly differently, and the keywords might be very different. But there's a whole bunch of automation available on that aspect. We are constantly releasing products on how to make image quality superior. You don't necessarily have to do a photo shoot. There are ways where you can allow for just manipulation of the image to make it look a lot more professional through use of machine technique or AI, generative AI techniques to improve the quality of the image and so on and so forth, right? So a lot of these tools are natively available in the platform. Many of our sellers are using tools like ChatGPT and others to just understand listing keyword optimization, right? And you may not be a native English speaker, you may not be a native German speaker, but you have
Very
a
correct.
lot of these generative AI tools that are available to get you a good first cut answer for all your products. Now, this might seem trivial if you have 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 products that are listed, but we have sellers who have anywhere between 300 to 3,000 sellers products that they list. And by the way, they churn their products about a third every year, right? So they're generating that much new listing every year. And so how do we optimize? How do you change the content of the listing depending on customer feedback that you're doing is not an easy task if you have 3,000 agents or 3,000 products to manage. A lot of machine technology is now available out there. A lot of our service providers do talk a little bit about that in their services as well. So keep plugged into some of those networks, and you'll start to sort of understand what the best practices are that entrepreneurs are using.
Excellent. Now, I've seen loads of questions on compliances. I'm going to go back to Bipin. Bipinji, people are asking about, what are the primary laws, obligations, compliances, custom obligations, also taxation or other laws that most MSMEs will need to be compliant with. Now, I don't think we can list all of them here, but I'm sure we can just, with your experience, we can just take them all through a list of stuff that they all need to, understand to be compliant with.
Yeah. See, FEMA is one thing I think we should be cognizant of. The rules which are there of exports and the getting in foreign exchange. A lot of things are related to that. So there are some compliances which are required from a payment reconciliation perspective. And we have mentioned some of these in our report also. From a customs perspective, see, if it's a courier export, the courier will take care of most of the things. But from a perspective of there would be compliances from a GST perspective also. There would be compliances from a movement of goods perspective also. So there would be compliances, and then if you have returns and other things, there will be further compliances which are there. I think there are professionals out there who really help, but there are also mechanisms which are there, tech-based mechanisms, which can be very cost efficient and which can take care of most of these issues which are there. Uh, yeah, I think those are basically, and I think everybody who's been there in the system is used to doing compliances. Even if it was domestic clearances, you would require GST compliances, which are huge. Here, the only issue is that even for export purposes, while there would be exports, and we have asked for export incentives, which may entail further compliances, but I think the government is aware. They have given leeway to the MSMEs to be able to do compliances on regular intervals, where they have not, this report has catered to that they should be allowed, like reconciliation of shipping bills with foreign exchange. We have asked them that today it's a per shipping bill reconciliation that should go to a regular basis, because we want to reduce those compliances. So the endeavor has been, and I think the government is also looking at this report now so that they can see how we can really, they can also bring down those compliances from an MSME perspective. But most of these are listed on even on the e-commerce websites portal and DGFT portal. So I think help can be taken from there.
Guys, and some of you that have not got answers, we have the 8-week Mastering Business Avenues in Exports program coming up. So please look out for it, register for it. It's completely free of cost. Those of you that are not aware of all the compliances, all the things that you need to be aware of, you need to be compliant with, please join that course. It's free, and it is going to be available for all of you that register. So we don't have to cover all of that here right now. But I have a very important question for Bhupen. Today you are heading Amazon Global Services in India. Now, global selling in India. Now, Bhupen, what is it that you see 2, 3, 4 years down the line? What's going to happen as far as e-commerce exports are concerned at Amazon specifically, and also throughout the nation? When we're looking at, there's this sudden now shift of focus, and we are all saying that e-commerce exports need to be pushed, primarily because we have a huge number of micro and small enterprises that need to be connected to international markets throughout, that have the potential, that have the capability to actually make great products, which can service an international requirement. So how do you see things happening over the next 2, 3 years? And how do you think Indian entrepreneurs will be able to tap into diverse markets around the world?
Fantastic question. I think, what we have seen in the last 18 to 24 months, and if I just create some extrapolation from that, and then some disproportionate lifts from that, I would probably answer the question in 2 parts. First is just the awareness that e-commerce export is an area that you can start playing in continues to get built up pretty aggressively. Just look at the interest that you're getting on the questions here. And I've been doing some of these webinars for 2, 3 years now. The kind of questions that we are getting a lot more sophisticated, and the number of questions that we are getting is also increasing. That shows how much interest and awareness there already is. So I think that's just going to continue to escalate and get better and better. And we're going to have a lot more smaller businesses come into playing into the e-commerce export space. Why is that? Because e-commerce exports allows you to start with a very small amount of investment, sometimes as small as 10 or 15 lakh rupees, and depending on the category that you are in, and get started and to see how things are working. You don't necessarily have to have big marketing budgets, big logistics budget, big product development budgets to sort of get started on e-commerce. Therefore, MSMEs are best suited to get into it, as long as you sort of understand the technology components that we talked about, and as long as you tap into some of the help that is already available from a compliance perspective that Bipinji talked about, how do you get the FEMA regulations going, how do you get the package reconciliation, etc. So I really see that this trend is going to just gather momentum. And the reason I have a little bit of confidence in that is because if I just look at the representation of seller base that we see on Amazon Global Selling, it continues to be pan-India. We have sellers from Srinagar all the way down to Coimbatore. We have sellers from Junagadh all the way to Darjeeling. So it's across the spectrum. And we have sellers who are different demographics. We have sellers who are fresh college graduates. We have sellers who are second generation contract manufacturers who sort of want to start their own brands. We have sellers who have left corporate gigs and started their own e-commerce export companies and so on. So I'm quite confident that the trend and the understanding that e-commerce exports is something that everybody can play into will just gather even more momentum. The second aspect that I think will even create a further thing is this simplification of logistics and payments, and all of that will eliminate all the friction points and the anxieties that exist. So that will create the next level of enablers where people will say, Look, if I am a manufacturer based in Kanpur who manufactures socks and I can sell socks to somebody in Kerala, who's to say that this political boundary is here? Why can't I sell in Singapore? Why can't I sell in Germany? Why? And the answer to that question is yes, you absolutely can. You're just limited by your mind. And that is going to sort of accelerate even more. So I'm quite happy that all the forums that you guys are driving in India SME is also driving the awareness. Bipin, thought organizations such as you are publishing the reports that creates the awareness and the friction points that exist that influences the governments to take the right necessary next steps. Amazon is doing its own part in terms of creating technology infrastructure and making it even more easy to list and discover and sell these products. So this whole ecosystem that has come together is really a good positive thing that I see for the next 3 to 5 years.
Excellent. I think we've all got a clear idea about what to expect. I think you shared that bit with us. Bipinji, what are your insights on what do you think is going to happen on the ecosystem front as far as the government is concerned? They are in their third term. They've just brought in an amazing amount of focus on creating a stronger foundation for micro, small, medium enterprises. Making financing easier, trying to look at quality testing and all of that. Apart from also trying to relook at the way we are training and skilling our employees and labor, which is highly, I'd say one of the most important factors for micro, small, medium enterprises. And then you have this access to markets, wherein the government can do as much, apart from the fact that the government needs to look at making compliance easier throughout. Because the lesser the compliance that we have, more and more people will be able to enjoy the fruit of, export, being able to look at markets around the world and so on. What is it that you feel over the next 2 or 3 years are the most important things that need to happen, and what is the low-lying, I say, fruit that one can grab easily?
I would like to club my thoughts into 3 categories as to what would happen, which would really change the scenario in India. One is customs clearance and logistics. I think customs facilitations would reach. So I think dedicated policies for e-commerce exports would come in, which would allow faster custom clearance. The export hubs we have been talking about for e-commerce export hubs we have been talking about would become a reality. We would see not only faster clearances, but any other issue which is required to be taken care of. So the limits of exports from a cargo or returns or the value of so that's something which would I see a lot of change happening very quickly. In the next 1 year, I would say that these changes would get implemented. On the payment reconciliation part, the regulator, the RBI, is fully focused on that. They are looking at how to ease the burden of e-commerce, the MSMEs exporting through e-commerce players, and we are going to see reduction in costs, of simplified mechanism of reconciliations, ease in compliances, and really making this a very a simplistic process. And then I think the states are going to jump into the bandwagon. We may see state level e-commerce policies and national e-commerce policies. Definitely, there is a policy, but I think it's going to be more involved policies which would come in, where the states would also facilitate exports through these create mechanism for exports, for financing, for any other help which the e-commerce exporters would require. I think we'll see an exponential growth on e-commerce exports in the next 2 to 3 years because of all of these results. That's what my thought is, and I hope this turns back into a reality pretty soon.
Excellent. Bhupen, your closing comments. We've had a lot of questions. I'm sorry, I'm not able to take all of them because we are already out of time. I don't want to hold you any longer than what we promised you. But there are a lot of questions. So, whatever your last comments can be about, how to come onto the platform, how to utilize this huge potential that we are all looking at, which is of B2C exports. Where so at least we can, I was hoping maybe in the next 3, 4, 5 years down the line, India could look at $100 billion in terms of cross-border e-commerce exports, and that I think is the potential in terms of the number of products that we make and the number of categories that we have MSMEs working in. But completely your time to tell us, what do you feel? What do you want us to do?
I think it's very, very simple in my mind. If you just look at the entrepreneurship and the manufacturing capability and the diversity of categories where India has fully formed supply chains, there is absolutely no reason why India cannot be a large source of selection for Amazon customers the world over, right? And for those of you who track Amazon and how we talk about our website, Jeff Bezos has said selection, selection, selection. It's the everything store. So everything that is manufactured in India, Amazon customers will be interested in looking at, and therefore Amazon Global Selling is interested in helping you list that selection for all our 200 million plus Prime members. We have built technology that makes all of this very, very seamless, and we are participating in the ecosystem to make some of the peripheral processes friction-free, like Bipinji talked about. So in general, I feel like we are entering a place where it is awareness and entrepreneurship limited, and the harder we push on awareness, the entrepreneurship will naturally happen. And that's where I think I remain very, very excited. I think I really like the goal of $1 trillion merchandise exports and 200 to 300 billion of that coming from e-commerce exports. That's a 20 to 30% share, which is a phenomenal target to chase. And if I just look at the number of sellers who are getting interested and the per seller revenue that is happening, that definitely seems like a worthwhile goal to chase by 2030.
Excellent. So, a heartfelt thank you to both of you for spending the last hour, last 1 hour with us, sharing what are the possibilities of exactly how can MSMEs actually harness this huge opportunity. And we are all thankful to the fact that Amazon is here in India, looking at capacity building MSMEs for foraying into international markets without the need for actually looking at B2B. And we all know how B2B has actually left a lot of MSMEs with a bad taste because of very low margins and too many intermediaries in between, not having to understand the customer, not knowing who the end customer is, and so many other issues. And we are all very sure that the government is now very, very clear about what it needs to do. The fact that it has taken 2 or 3 very important steps in the last, I would say, 7 to 8 months, are all a very, very positive sign of things to come. With that, thank you all very much. I'm extremely sorry for not being able to take all the questions, but I'll try and see if we can have some of the questions sent over to Bhupenji and Bipinji both, and try and see if we can get answers for you. I repeat the fact that we have the 8 weeks managing business avenues in exports program coming up, which is free of cost for all members of India SME Forum. Please feel free to join in the course so that you are updated on every aspect of exports, so that you can jump into the export market like so many others who have done wonderfully well. With that, thank you and have a great evening. Thank you, Bhupen. Thank you, Bipin.
Talk soon. Bye.